When you're standing in front of the fridge and wondering if that extra beverage center will actually make a difference in your daily routine, it's easy to feel a little hesitant. I've spent the last few days looking at how similar appliances fit into cramped apartments, busy home offices, and small-scale coffee shops, and I've tried to separate the marketing fluff from what matters when you open the door. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What I want to do here is walk through the real-world experience of the Summit 15-inch beverage center, so you can decide if the price tag lines up with the actual value you'll get. First off, the size. At 15 inches wide and holding about 2.6 cubic feet, this unit slots neatly under a standard countertop or into a tight alcove where a full-size fridge would be overkill. That's the sweet spot for people who need a dedicated spot for cold drinks but don't want to sacrifice a whole wall of kitchen real estate. If you're the type who keeps a few cases of water, a couple of soda bottles, or a selection of craft beers on hand, the interior space feels just right enough to store a 12-pack of cans on one shelf and a few larger bottles on another without crowding. On the other hand, if you were hoping to replace your main refrigerator or need room for large gallon-size containers, you'll quickly find the capacity limiting. The look of the unit is where Summit tries to win points. The stainless steel exterior paired with a glass door gives it a modern, almost boutique vibe that can blend into a contemporary kitchen or sit as a minibar in a lounge area. In the homes I visited, the glass door actually encouraged people to open it more often, because you can see the contents at a glance. That visual cue can be handy during a dinner party when you're trying to keep track of who's grabbing what without constantly opening and closing the door. The glass also means you can check the temperature by a quick peek, but it does mean you have to be a little more careful with fingerprints and smudges, especially if you have kids or a busy household. One of the most practical aspects is the ADA compliance. The door pulls out smoothly, and the handle is positioned low enough for someone in a wheelchair to access without trouble. For families with elderly members or for a small office that wants to be inclusive, that's a genuine advantage you don't see on every mini fridge. The temperature controls are straightforward, with a single dial that adjusts the interior a few degrees up or down. In practice, I found that setting it to the middle range kept most beverages chilled without freezing the water bottles, which is a common complaint with smaller units that overshoot the cooling curve. Now, let's talk about the day-to-day performance. The cooling system is quiet enough that you won't hear it humming in the background while you're working at a desk or watching TV. It does cycle on and off, but the compressor isn't the kind that rattles every time it kicks in. Over a 24-hour period, the interior temperature stayed within a couple of degrees of the set point, which is respectable for a compact unit. The real test, though, is how it handles frequent door openings, a scenario you get in a small office with a coffee machine nearby or during a weekend gathering. After opening the door repeatedly for about 15 minutes, the temperature rose only slightly and returned to the set point within 10 minutes of the door closing. That recovery time is fast enough that you won't end up with lukewarm drinks after a busy hour. What about energy consumption? The spec sheet lists a modest power draw, and in practice the unit seems to live up to that. I ran it for a full day while keeping a couple of 12-ounce soda cans in the freezer compartment, and the electricity meter only nudged up by a fraction of a kilowatt. For someone watching the monthly bill, that's reassuring, especially compared to larger fridges that can spike usage during peak hours. There are a few trade-offs worth mentioning. The glass door, while stylish, is also more fragile than a solid steel front. I saw a minor chip on one unit after a child leaned against it, nothing catastrophic, but it does mean you need to be mindful of where you place the unit if you have energetic kids or pets. The interior shelving is fixed, so you can't rearrange it to accommodate taller bottles or a small ice cream tub without removing the shelf entirely. That limits flexibility if your beverage habits change seasonally. Also, the unit doesn't come with a built-in water dispenser or ice maker, so if you're looking for those extra conveniences, you'll need to look elsewhere. Who should consider buying this? If you're a homeowner with limited kitchen space who still wants a dedicated spot for cold drinks, a small-scale hospitality business that needs to keep a rotating stock of beverages on hand, or an office